probably do, and probably for every possible communication system, is first you want to capture these packages. Then you'll want, so they're called bursts in GSM, just a naming thing, but it's just a package really. Those bursts are decrypted, if they are encrypted, and then you want to interpret them. I'll go by these points in the reverse direction, so we'll start at number 3, because there's more to say about number 1. So, interpreting the decrypted burst. You have all kinds of choices here, thanks to all kinds of open source projects. You have a GSM decode program running in AirProbe. AirProbe is an open source GSM sniffer, so in development really, because it can't sniff everything yet. But this is one of the ways. Wireshark, the newer versions of Wireshark have a GSM stack. And OpenBTS, OpenBSC, both open source projects, really cool ones, that just make an open source implementation of items inside the GSM network. So OpenBTS will run you a, so they're not meant to work together or something, right? Because both of them just, if you have OpenBSC running on a computer, you'll need to have a cell tower connected to it, a nano cell or something like that, and then you can run your own GSM network, and OpenBTS will run on the USRP radio, which I'll come to, but which is just a software radio device that will pick up and send out signals. So you have all kinds of choices here. Perhaps you'll need to tweak something, but this won't be the hardest part of the label. Decrypting the bursts. I was fortunate enough that this tool was released, I think, a month ago or something, and they called it cracking, so I can use this picture. So I really like. Okay, so A51 was just reverse engineered in 1994, which is not entire, so somewhere between 1994 and 1998. There's all kinds of academical papers breaking the alleged A51 cipher in the meantime. I'm not sure if anything really changed in between, but mostly we say 1994. And as I said, there were many academic breaks quite easily. There's just some things are not really okay in cipher. But those attacks really never came to anything. So I think the best attack from that time is an attack by Gonish, which ran in a complexity of 2 to the power of 40 point something, which was still way too much at that time. So to really practically do something. Then we started seeing more time memory trade-off attacks. And this is also the latest batch of attacks that have been in the news and stuff, and all kinds of conferences. This actually began way earlier, so I believe Shamir also and Alan, they already wrote that this was definitely possible and gave an idea of how you should do this. At some point, there were 2 guys, David Hutton and I forget the other guy. In 2007, they were at the CCC conference in Berlin. And they announced, well, we are going to build tables. That's basically what you mostly do in a time memory trade-off. You make an entire code book in which you can reverse lookup a key given a piece of ciphertext. Now, that's what they were going to do. And they announced this, and they had a gigantic amount of FPGAs and I don't know what, and they were going to have to compute this for 8 months. And actually in the presentation they said, so they started the presentation I think with asking at the end why we are announcing this publicly. So of course someone asked this, and they gave a list of I think 3, 4 people or something who had been busy trying to crack A51, either by tables or other means, and that simply stopped doing it, didn't want to talk about it, vanished, stuff like that. That didn't really help for them, because they had to compute for 8 months, and somewhere after the 7th month, they seem to have thrown away everything they computed, and do not wish to talk about it with anybody. So it's a dangerous business, cracking A51. So then we had Karsten Noel, who presented at HAR a similar attempt, only the one big difference here was everyone can compute this at home, like a sort of SETI project. using graphical cards. And if everyone computes parts of the table, shares them via BitTorrent, then there's nobody who can stop this, right? So you'd have to take out a lot of people, and then probably the providers aren't going that far. Yeah. So the tables were actually ready somewhere in December last year. In the meantime, new tables have been computed that actually now just took 1 month to compute on a machine with 4 graphics cards. Because, well, graphic card can compute a lot of things in parallel, right? So that's why this was a much better idea. And they made a new set which is now called the Berlin set. So if you want to start doing this, you have to look up which ones you're downloading, because you can just download over 1 terabyte of data, which is useless now. You have to download something that's called the Berlin set. It's a bit smarter attempt, but basically the same. It uses some funny stuff, but ask me afterwards if you want to know. So, and they released the tool BruCON, and BruCON will use these tables to look up your keys. Because what you do is once you've captured a burst, you guess its content. So if you need to have some known plain text. Because if you have known plain text, you can just XOR it with the encrypted burst, and you get keystream. And keystream is some part of this one-time packet which used to encrypt the entire message. And this table basically just lists session keys to pieces of keystream. Now, it's a rainbow table. It's impossible, well, improbable to store all possible. Well, yeah, 2 to the power 64 possible internal states, 2 to the power 64 possible session keys. Actually, it's 2 to the power 54, because for some reason, when designing this, they decided, okay, so we're generating a session key 2 to the power 64, so 64 bits. We'll just drop the last 10 and 0 them out. Which is, well, it can't have been to enhance the security, but who knows? And this table just gives, if it happens that this part of keystream is in the table, then it will know the session key. Then we come to step 1. And step 1 is this has always been the hard part, capturing the stuff in the air. So GSM has been broken for, well, 15 years or something. But it was so damn hard to get the signals out of the air. Because equipment to do this is very expensive, and people just couldn't manage. Then the software development of software, SDR, software-defined radio, started taking off, especially with this device, the USRP. So a universal software radio peripheral. It just is connected to your computer, and it can receive all kinds of frequencies. It can receive and send, and you can do with it whatever you want, basically. And it will send those samples that it gets off the air to the computer. So this is a picture of USRP1, which has a USB 2.0 port. The USRP2 actually has a gigabit Ethernet port to connect to your computer. So you can get a lot more data from that. Now, then you run it on with some software. Radio is the logical choice. And AirProp on top of that, which just invokes methods from radio, which will cause the USRP to sample a certain frequency at a certain rate, with a certain decimation, and demodulate the signal, and all that kind of stuff you don't want to worry about. And you will receive signal, also just values of these signals in your computer that you can interpret. So we're all looking at hacking this interface, right? The air interface between the phone and the cell tower. Because it's everywhere, right? I mean, you just have to hook up an antenna and go. The air interface between those two are usually divided in a part that's uplink, part that's downlink. And those parts are again divided into channels. This is the setup actually of the base station that I can receive from my office. They numbered all the channels. So if you get a channel 94 assigned to you, then you will transmit on the upper, lower 94 one, and you'll receive on the upper 94 one. Now, you'd say that phone calls will go like this, right? Just pick a channel and communicate, but that's not what happens. What really happens is more like this. It hops around between 4 channels, and this is what makes the capturing of the signals really tough. This is actually not a security measure, right? So the GSMA said, well, we have another security measure, and hackers are calling it now another security measure we've breached. This was always meant as a sort of general, just a quality of service idea. So you just, if you transmit on a lot of frequencies, then most of the packages will get a sort of average quality, instead of one guy getting assigned a channel which is really crappy, and because you cannot say, well, in this area, channel 17 will be very good or something. You know, buildings can come up and all kinds of stuff can interfere. You don't know before that. So this is pretty common in all kinds of wireless networks. But it was never meant as a security feature. Now the trick is that the information on how the signal will hop, so on which channels and in which sequence, at what point that do the phone and the mast agree upon that, or actually the mast just commands it. So if at that point encryption has already started, then it becomes really tough to listen on GSM calls. I will get that here. So if you, for instance, you're paged with your mobile phone for an incoming call, then you'll respond to the mast saying, oh well, I got a page from you, I request a channel. Actually, you just request a channel, he assigns you a channel, and then you can, because there's one common channel where everyone can shout on, and then you get a channel assigned, and you'll say, okay, well, on that channel you'll say, well, I got a call from you, I wish to answer it. And then at some point, the mast will say, okay, start ciphering. And you'll respond with saying, okay, I started ciphering, and from this moment on, all communication is encrypted. Now, then some other information is exchanged, and at the end, at some point, the speech channels are signed. Now, so if this happens after the encryption step, then you have a real problem. Now, there are 3 ways to assign this. All 3 are defined. Off the top of my head, I think there's only one that has this information sent encrypted, but it's basically the only one I've ever seen. So I hear stories about in other countries or something where they do share this information publicly, but I've never seen it. So. And that gives you a hopping problem, which is fun on a Hacking for Beer conference, where hop is usually not much of a positive thing. But in this case, it prevents us really from being, able to listen in on GSM. Just because if there are enough channels and they're widespread, you just don't know where to listen at what time. You can try to get them all, but it's hard and it takes a lot of computation. And this really, I believe, has not been done, at least not by hackers and people who publicly admit to this. Another attack, a man-in-the-middle attack. If you have this the same picture as you just saw, a attacker could go and sit in the middle, because, I mean, if he causes your phone to connect to him and access your phone towards the real base station, there's nothing preventing him from this, because he just has to identify himself. So the funny part is, there's a broadcast channel, and a GSM cell tower will just transmit a number on it saying, okay, I'm in this country, and it will transmit another number saying, I'm this provider. If you just use the same numbers, then, off you go. So if I send 204.004, I act as my own provider, KPN, in the Netherlands. and all KPN telephones that find my signal the strongest will come to that base station. And then what the attacker could do is just let the first messages pass on, but then at the moment that the start ciphering command is sent, he could either, well, so whatever encryption is used, he just changes it and, okay, we're going to cipher in A52. Why? Because A52 is so easy to crack. So he gets just one command back, ciphering started, and if he succeeds in cracking the A52 cipher in that time, so that's the red part of the diagram, then he knows the session key. And the funny part is that in GSM, whatever cipher you use, even if you use A53, which is really strong, you will use the same key that was computed. So it doesn't matter if I can just set up a connection on A52, crack the key, and then just cipher on A53 to the real mask, then this will work. But there are a lot of articles about this, but I'm not sure if it has ever been done in real life. I haven't seen it, and no one has again publicly said so. Well, because the real mast, will send a message, start ciphering, and it will expect all communication from that point on to be ciphered. You cannot say as a telephone, no, I'm not going to do this. So there is no way for the attacker to cause the messages coming from the mast. Those will all be enciphered, and the mast will expect only enciphered messages. And then, so you are right in the fact that you could just set up a zero cipher. But in this case, that won't help. So if you would want to do this, you just need to set up your own base station, for instance, using OpenBTS or OpenBSC. And you need to have something to act as a phone, which is done Osmo BB at this moment, is probably the best one. But it's still being developed, so this is not ready yet. And you have another problem because you still get the hopping part you need to get right. But now at least you know all the variables. You have a very small time window in which to crack A52, and it's detectable. I transmit with a mast. So if someone's listening for masts, I don't think someone actually is looking for this, but if you are looking for fake masts, then you should be able to find it. But yeah, I don't think providers or police has people riding around in cars, looking, is there a fake base station here? Also, this might be detectable from the phone side. So in principle, it should be so that if the encryption is turned off, if there are no encryption is used, then your phone should alert you to this. So there's a bit of discussion whether this really happens or not. It is so that the providers can turn this warning off remotely by a bit on the SIM card. I've not seen it, but I've seen a lot of pictures at least of people saying, hey, look, I'm not seeing that this is unencrypted. Well, it should. Also, there are phones that you can buy that actually warn you, oh wait, you're now running A52 encryption. But those phones cost like $2,000 and are available at spy shops. But the fact that these phones are sold, I mean, just causes you to think, well, maybe these attacks really do happen. You could do it another way. And this is the way that was actually presented on Black Hat last time by Chris Paget. So I call it the easy way, it's not really easy, but so just link up OpenBTS to Asterisk. Asterisk is an open source telephone voice over IP server. Well, I don't know if anyone has ever tried to use Asterisk or configure it. I found it helpful. So if you succeed in this, then you just act as a base station and people will connect to it, and you can at least listen in on all the outgoing calls. Because at this point you can indeed just turn off encryption and all the outgoing calls are just sent voice over IP, they come back voice over IP, the response, and we just send it on to the mobile phone, there's no problem there. Of course, that's the downside, you can only listen into the calls that are made at the phone you attack and not incoming calls to the phone, because it's no longer part of the GSM network. It's now camping at your base station, so the real GSM network cannot find this phone, will not send messages to it. Now also the number, because you don't know the telephone number of the the person you're attacking. So you cannot put this in the messages to the guy he's calling. So he'll just probably see number unknown or something like that. But it's a minor issue. The plus side is this already works. Right? So this package showed is working. You can just do this if you buy a user fee, which is all the stuff around $1,500, and then a computer, and you can go right ahead. There is even another sort of way, and this one I really like. It's a hybrid attack. So what you just do is you capture a conversation, then once and you need to capture the challenge, and then you just store the conversation as a man in the middle, and you do not in any way interfere with it. You just store it all, and then at some point you act as a fake base station toward the phone you're attacking, use the same challenge, and it will compute the same key. So even a call made years ago, you could still, if the guy still has the same phone, you could still decrypt it afterwards by just having him compute the same key, set up an A52 communication, crack that key, and then decipher everything you've stored from him. But again, this has the problem of listening in on the call, the whole big problem. Yeah. But I think it's a nice attack. These are all confidentiality attacks, trying to get everything. So there's just a small list of some other things that are IMSI catchers. Well, this is just trivial. So you can just get someone's IMSI. So everyone knows this for years now. Actually, the police use this all the time. And so when a criminal, they're stalking, and because the criminals tend to have like lots of prepaid phones on them, and they just turn on an IMSI catcher, and all the phones will camp to the IMSI catcher and will tell them their IMSIs. And if they do this often enough in places, then they will know, okay, so these are the phones that this criminal is using, and they can ask wiretaps for these phones. So you could also attack other parts of the network. This was just the air interface. After that, the calls are decrypted. Often a cell tower communicates to the network also through the air with a sort of directional wave antenna. And there are a lot of rumors that this connection is not encrypted. I don't know, no one has actually ever seen this, at least really shown evidence that this is the case, but this could be a nice attack. You just listen in there, and then you get all the calls made. Some other things, so there was a guy once testing the actual telephone network, and he sent some misformed package, and what happened was he crashed the lawful interception gateway. So for an entire day, the police couldn't wiretap anything just by some malformed package. The Nokia 1100 rumors, has anyone heard this? So there was like a year or two ago that if you had a Nokia 1100, you could intercept SMS messages meant for other phones, and bullshit. So just not true. I think someone with an enormous stock of old Nokia 1100 phones brought this rumor into the world, because they were actually sold for thousands of dollars on eBay, but it just isn't true. Your location could be revealed. At HAR, the Hacking at Random conference in the Netherlands last year, there was also a network, and what they found there was that a lot of phones had the RRLP process running, and that just means that if a cell tower sends it a certain command, it will just give its GPS coordinates. This is something that needs to be turned on in phones by law in America. Because there they thought, well, if someone calls 911 and they aren't conscious long enough to tell them where they are, then at least we can always find where the phone is. And so just to accommodate us all, they probably turned this all on in all phones, and you cannot really switch it off, by my knowledge. Of course, the attack vector here is quite small, because you already have, if you are attacking that way, you already have a cell tower in the area, so you already know it's in the area. But okay, that's like a 35 kilometers wide area, and GPS is a bit more secure, precise. And you have the denial of service attacks. You can just send a message to a phone, you're stolen, switch yourself off, and it will do so. And it depends on the brand and the type of phone, how serious this is. So It could go either way. Chris Paget always says so. The Apple phones, they need a hard reboot, which means you need to pull out the battery. I don't have an iPhone, but I hear this is really hard. There are also phones that just won't come on again. They're just broken for life. That's death. You could also DOS the cell tower. And so Guido Spaar showed this at the CCC, where he just continuously occupies bandwidth and no one can then make a call to the cell tower. There are some improvements. So GSM is really broken. But the newer UMTS, all the stuff, so all the 3G, they already use mutual authentication. Actually, they also use a much stronger cipher, which hasn't been broken yet, so it's already way better. The 4G systems, I think, will be using AES. I'm not sure if the decision is really officially made now, but so AES 256, I think. Well, it's going somewhere. But you know, GSM will not leave us the next 20 years. It's amazing not just how many people use it, but how many machines run on GSM. So a lot of cache machines, all that stuff. And the investment here is huge, so the providers aren't just going to scratch this But there are some things that you can do against this. If you really are still concerned that someone is listening in on your phones, use just the 3G services. So set the GSM part of your phone off. Turn it off. Do not allow it to make a GSM connection. Or you could use crypto solutions, like crypto phone, or stuff, just an extra layer of encryption on top of the entire conversation. And well. So, well, what I really wanted to say here was just that GSM is really broken. But this has been so for the last 15 years or something. I mean, this is nothing new. It's just, what is more new is that more people now have access to it thanks to this new radio stuff. But nothing really seriously has changed. Just, well, the easy man-in-the-middle attack, that now really works. The rest is getting there. They still need some work, especially on this hopping part. But if this is fixed, then we're really at a new level of how crappy everything is. And there are always a lot of other attacks that you could think of. Of course, that doesn't really even matter probably, because I personally don't think that there will be a lot of attacks of people, you know, putting masts up in the air and listening along. The weakest link will probably be our cell phones. And so cell phones are now completely in computers that can do anything, and so also they can run malware. And this is probably, you know, the way where things are going. It means a much cheaper solution. Write a virus, send it to get it over at the mobile phones, and you can listen on everything. So that's probably what the next talk will say something about. So, well, I personally own a BlackBerry. I wasn't happy with it at all, but this will probably make it worse. Questions?
Microphone.
From what you were talking, I think the point was that the hopping is probably today the biggest barrier in order to capture. First question, do we know the hopping algorithm?
Yeah.
So we know the hopping algorithm.
Yeah, it's in the specifications.
Is there ability to predict? Are there weaknesses in it, first of all?
Well, so I'm not sure if this has really been looked after. So the point there is if so a mast can just use one single variant of the hopping, because all the calls will have to hop at the same sequence. So if you get it from, if you know that the hopping sequence that one mast uses, then you will know that the sequence that it will use for all calls. But I think a lot of people are going in the direction of just capturing everything and finding out what the sequence was later.
Okay, second question then, for the hopping. Is it possible then to go and say, well, I would try to create calls, and I would try, I would try to do an analysis, I would just be there and try to connect to, and see the pattern and by trying to see the pattern and knowing the algorithm, trying to identify.
Actually, so I think the easiest way would just be to connect with a phone and read out the pattern yourself and then attack it. Yes. But for some reason, so I'm not sure. I haven't tried this yet, and I'm not sure why I haven't seen this happening.
So there's no attack that was going to that direction.
No, yeah. So I'm not sure. So I'm still thinking why hasn't someone gone to a conference, checked out what the poll was there, and just showed that it could happen. I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry?
We don't hear you.
Yeah, so I'll repeat it.
Like to speak out loud.
You need to do some plain text attack, non-plain text.
Yeah.
Are they also looking at devices who will send always the same plain text because you know what they are going to send? For instance, people are listening into the voicemails.
Yeah. Well, what they are, there simply is the case that a lot of a lot of messages in the system are already almost completely predictable. The problem now is that the pad messages and the to-be string, you see that a lot if you look at GSM messages, which is just filling. And this is a standard pattern. And if you have a message almost completely consisting of filling, then well, you have a lot of plain text. So that's really the way they attack it now. And that's also the first defense that the GSMA is now proposing. So in 2008 they released a spec saying we should now, in high priority, make this filling random. Because the header already says how much bytes will be information bytes, and then the rest is of course filling. And then this attack won't work. Yeah, and then it will just be a way of finding enough plain text. It's hard to say if they will find it.
Okay, thank you.
Question: how much does this apply to GSM-R, the railway version of GSM, and for Tetra, the C2000 or Astrid network?
I really don't know. I would like to know. This is something I really want to look into, but I haven't had time. But this is really interesting. I mean, you have a lot of networks all running in the air and stuff, and especially those that they really look like GSM at the first sight. So probably you can listen into it, but I just don't know.
Okay, last question.
Yeah. Not a question, but a comment regarding the channel hopping problem. I've played around a bit with it, and the main problem is that you're connected to the USRP on a USB link, and you don't have real-time control over tuning. So actually changing the channel and landing on the right channel at the right time is the main obstacle to hacking the topic.
Sorry?
Again?
Oh yeah, well, if everyone...
Okay, so my point was I played around with channel hopping,
Yeah.
and the main issue is getting the USRP to tune to the right channel in time. So actually it's a real-time control problem to your tuner that's not solved yet.
Yeah, that's true. So, but just storing everything now with the USRP2 seems possible, right?
I think you need one for upling, one for download, but it should work.
Yeah, okay, so yeah. Okay.
Okay, last quick question. I just wanted to know if the same encryption system is used for SMS as for calls.
So it's SMS